Hi, I'm Linda, and this is No Frills ASMR. I thought today we could talk about a current event situation just because I was looking at it this morning. There is a government shutdown possible on the horizon, and I wanted to kind of talk about that, but the reason it, sunk in a little bit today is because I don't recall as a kid ever hearing about the government shutting down. And so I was kind of like doing a little research on, is this a new phenomena with the government? And it is kind of. Before the 1980s, it didn't happen. They would just fund the government, even though it would be like kind of technically shutting down. I don't know. But then after that, they started to actually shut the government down. But it wasn't until Clinton's presidency, and that's what I feel like I remember. During Clinton's presidency, it became such a political, they want this and they want this and they can't agree, and so they're shutting down. That's probably the beginning of all the 24-hour news that they needed something to talk about. I really do believe that those 24-hour news channels are sort of poison because they turn everything political into I don't know, whatever, that's a separate video. But yeah, so apparently it wasn't really that much of a thing until then. Clinton administration, and then it's gone ever since then. And a lot of you probably remember the one in 2018. There was a shutdown. That was the longest one ever. It was 35 days, I think. And when they get to be that long, you start to notice things like, I remember going through the airport and there was just, everybody was talking about like, give yourself extra time because TSA lines are really long and all that. And they are considered essential. So they don't, get sent home, but they don't get paid. They don't get a paycheck. And as it goes on, people start to get a little salty about that, or they call into work, but also like some of the background paperwork and things aren't getting done. So you do start to see a ripple effect with a lot of those kind of things. So anyway, that's kind of jumping the gun a little, I guess. So what we're going to talk about today, sorry, hold on, is government shutdown. I'm not a expert on anything to do with politics or government, anything like that. I make ASMR videos. They're to help you just kind of keep your mind in one place, maybe long enough to fall asleep. Some people like them to be about current events or politics. Some people don't. If you're one who doesn't, just don't listen. There's plenty of other things to listen to. On my channel, of course, there's like 900 other videos. I made one yesterday testing this diamond to see if it's real or not. That was kind of fun. But today we're talking about government shutdown. I've spent about a half an hour doing some research about what's going on currently so that I can tell you, so you just know kind of what's going on, but double check everything. I could be wrong. I do my best. So basically what's happening is the U.S. government needs Congress to pass a funding bill each year to keep the government running. The bill that they're trying to get finished right now is the one that was called the One Big Beautiful Bill. I kind of feel like they've renamed it, but I don't really know. Now, I did a previous video really digging into the One Big Beautiful Bill and how it affects like most of us everyday people. So if you're curious about that, there is a video. You could just look up No Frills ASMR One Big Beautiful Bill, and it kind of talks about it. But there are parts of that bill that still are being worked out. And Congress has right now until September 30th at midnight. On midnight, September 30th, so going into the 1st of October, that midnight, that is their deadline to do a continuing resolution, is what it's called, of the current budget for now. So they've already done this once. This is the deadline from the last time they voted, and they went ahead and said, okay, we'll let it go until this deadline. And now they can either vote to kind of kick it down the road until the next deadline, which would be November 21st, or, well, that's what they have to do. That would be the next. Or they can let the government basically shut down if they don't, vote in favor. I don't know if that was very clear or not. But if Congress can't agree by this deadline, then parts of the government runs out of money. And that'll trigger a shutdown. And when there's a shutdown of the government, what happens is non-essential services stop. Now, non-essential things are like your national parks and I'm talking while I'm writing. National parks, monuments, national forests, things like that. And that would include like the campgrounds. I guess it depends on how much money they have in their budget for their park. I'm not sure. Now I'm not sure. But I do remember back in a different government shutdown we were at Yellowstone, and the bathrooms were closed. And I feel like the garbage wasn't picked up, but I'm just going to put an aside here that could have been something else, but I think it was a government shutdown. Anyway, so national parks, and then things you're trying to get done, like passports. That kind of thing is non-essential. So hopefully you're not planning to get your passport. Permits and applications for things that you need government approval. Those kind of things are non-essential. Essential things are like, air traffic control, the military. Things like Medicaid and Medicare are funded already, so they don't get affected by it. Your Social Security won't get affected by it. It's these kind of things. Now, federal workers who are considered non-essential, they will be, sent home without pay until they're brought back, and then they get back pay. But some people, like the TSA agents I was talking about, have to go to work. They have to work, but they don't get paid. Okay. They get paid eventually once the government opens back up. But for the time that the government's closed, they don't get a paycheck. Because it's non-essential workers who do the paychecks. I think that's why that's happening. Or maybe there's just not enough money for it. I don't know. Anyway, so that's kind of the effects of it. And this is very basic. You could go into a lot. And for some reason, I read that the government has said that some of these federal workers, if they get sent home, they are going to just lay them off permanently and not bring them back. So that could be pretty scary for them, I imagine. Anyway, okay. So that's that. Now, move these glasses out of the way. So what they need. So Congress has to, move this thing through. Now, I have a video about the U.S. government if you are curious, but Congress is made up of the House and the Senate. The House has already moved it through their chambers because the House only has to have a majority vote. And, currently the House is all of the House, the Senate, and the presidency are all Republican right now. And so the House had no problem moving it through. But the Senate has to get a cloture, I believe it's called, which means they need to have 60 votes. So even though they have a majority in the Senate, they have 53. This could be a little off because there could be some who don't call themselves either, but I don't know that. 53 Republicans and 47 Democrats. And they need to get 60. So they've got a little work to do here. Now, there are a few people who've already kind of stated that they might not be willing to vote with their party. There is a Democrat from Pennsylvania, John Fetterman, who has said that he will never, ever, 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 ever vote to shut down the government, but it is not an endorsement of the bill. He just feels that it's not good to shut down the government. There's Lisa Murkowski, who's from Alaska, and she has always said she'll stand for her people of Alaska, for what's best for them, but she hasn't. She'll vote with Republicans and then say she wished she hadn't. It's kind of a funny, I don't know, I've heard her talk and I'm like, but she has said currently she's kind of against it. And we'll go into what is on this, what they're kind of arguing about in a minute. And then there's wait a minute. Why am I want to call him Rand Paul, but it's Paul Rand. Rand Paul, Paul Rand. No, I can't think of it. Paul Rand. Rand Paul. That's so weird. My brain's having a brain stall. But anyway, he's a Republican from Kentucky. And he's sort of the opposite of those two because he believes so strongly in cutting all spending, government spending. He doesn't think the bill goes far enough at cutting, I think is why he's kind of against it. But, they'd probably come around. So you'd still have to have some more, right? 53, that would be 54, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So you'd still need 6 more Democrats to come around. Okay, so that's kind of that. So, like I said, they've already done like one of, stopgap, basically, where they kind of kicked the can down the road to tomorrow. September 30th at midnight. And then if they say, we'll do another stopgap, it'll take it up to November 21st. And there is going to be a meeting today, I think, with Trump and some of the, like I think John Thune, who's a Senate Majority Leader, is going to be there, and Chuck Schumer and, some of these guys. Okay. They're going to meet up. And Thune says, look, we just have to pass another stopgap to keep the government open. The Democrats are stopping that. Just, Democrats don't do that. And let's keep going. The Democrats say, no, we're not going to keep kicking the can down the road. We need to work this out and make some agreements on what we want in the bill and what we don't right now. And we're not going to just roll over. We'll see. We'll see what happens with that. So that's kind of what's going on. So there's negotiations supposed to go on today. I think it's today. So we'll see what happens. Some of the things that they're talking about that they're dealing with right now is the Affordable Care Act, which is also known as the ACA, stands for Affordable Care Act, tax credits. So there are currently subsidies for tax credits for people who use the Affordable Care Act, which is like the marketplace. But it is also a lot of small businesses buy into Affordable Care Act insurance plans for their employees, but they get tax credits for these things. Now, this personally is important to me because I own my own small businesses. I mean, by small, I mean it's me. I'm self-employed. But I use the Affordable Care Act and I use the tax credits. So it matters to me personally. Now, in the comments of one of my last videos, I can't remember, maybe it was Big Beautiful Bill, I don't know. Somebody said they shouldn't have to be paying for my insurance through tax credits. But one thing I would say about that is almost everybody gets tax credits for something. Like if you have kids, you get tax credits. If you buy a mega yacht, you get tax credits. If you, they're just you get an account because you could probably get some somewhere. Anyway, that's an aside. Sorry. That was a personal aside. All right. Some other things is Medicaid cuts. Uh-oh. That looks like I spelled it wrong. I think it's just weird because I wrote it weird. Medicaid cuts. Cuts to public media. And I know not everybody, but some people are like, yeah, but I don't want to fund PBS and NPR because they're too liberal. I just want to say one thing about that is that wrapped up in that is like small radio and TV stations in rural areas. That includes like their equipment, funding for their equipment and everything, just to keep them in business. I don't know if any of you on PBS watched like kids programming, or like NPR has programming like music and culture and jazz. There's a station in Massachusetts that plays jazz music, but they also played the NPR like news clip before they played jazz, so they lost all their funding. So just look at the nuances of these things sometimes, because politics wrap stuff up into one thing sometimes. I'm just gonna say that. Oh, I know what else. This is kind of there are these Medicaid. How do you say this? Actually, Medicare, I guess. Provisions, like Medicare related provisions that would include things like these small hospitals. They're called low volume hospitals, and they would be like hospitals that are out in the middle of nowhere where you have a hospital that serves like a big swath of land that doesn't have a whole lot of people, to be honest, but there are people there who need that, because otherwise they'd have to go 200 miles away, and they just don't make enough money to support themselves. That hospital can't support. So it does use Medicare related provisions to keep these kind of hospitals in business, or even just clinics. They might be much smaller than a hospital, I'm not talking big hospital, but that's for people who they're just things like that. Okay. And then they also have some things about rolling back telehealth, which a lot of people who are homebound or live out where it's a long way to go to get to a clinic, they can use telehealth, but that's another thing that they're talking about rolling back. And then I can't fit it on here. I guess I could start a new sheet. These are things that the Democrats are fighting to, like they're saying, if we are going to accept your proposal, Republicans, of adding, $75 billion to ICE and $150 billion increase to defense, then what we want from you is to not make these cuts to, Medicaid and Medicare provisions. And also included in that is Reproductive Health Service Fund, which includes Planned Parenthood. And so that's always a hot button issue. Planned Parenthood does all kinds of women's health services like pap smears, prescribing birth control, but they also do things that are very politically controversial, so I won't go into that, but that is one of the things. And then work requirements for Medicaid. one of the things they are adding is a requirements for Medicaid. 80 hours a month work requirement. It can be volunteer or work to keep Medicaid, and every month it has to be documented. And so there's a lot of talk about how that documentation works, how easy or hard it'll be to get through, whether everyone who's on Medicaid can even have the ability to do these things. So that's a whole nother subject that I won't get into, but just so you know what's going on. So these are the things the Democrats are fighting to kind of take out of it, are these cuts to these things. And so that is what the gist of it is. So we'll see what happens. As far as that spending thing goes, I did a video on government spending, and just for a little clarification, I mean, you could watch that video, but I think these could be a little bit, I think they're close. Okay, on Medicaid, the government spends around $909 billion. On the Affordable Care Act subsidies, it's about $398 billion. On public media, it's about $500 million. And this is in 2024. On the military, it's about $873 billion. And on immigration customs enforcement, it's about $10 billion. But the big beautiful bill will add $150 billion to the military. I think it's over the next, maybe it was 10 years. What was it, you guys? Anyway, so it'll raise it up to about $1 trillion. And then to ICE, it'll add $75 billion. So it'll add $150 billion to defense and $75 billion to ICE. So, you're talking $1 trillion for military and $85 billion for ICE. So, it's like to fund medical for people. You know what I'm saying? You hear what I'm saying? That, like, the government spends a lot of money, is what I'm telling you. And this is in 2024, and then this is to be added to it. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to say about that. I guess I'm just saying percentage-wise. You kind of got to look at these things, and I know this can sound like a lot of money, but then when you compare it to, like, other things, you go, oh, well, the government just spends a lot of money. We are a huge country. We spend a lot of money on stuff. Anyway, okay. Is there anything else that I forgot to tell you guys? But don't be surprised if you hear one side saying this side, and the other side saying this side, because that's politics. This is politics. But behind the scenes, they're probably, working in all kinds of negotiations. I hope. I like to think that they posture more in public and then they're actually getting things done in private. But I'm not sure anymore. I don't know. I like to think that. Anyway. So right now I don't have any, me personally, I don't have any trips to national parks planned right now. I don't need a passport. I'm not a federal worker, so I could pretend I don't care. But I do. All right. So there we go. I'm sure I forgot lots of things that I'll think of, but so midnight, September 30th is the deadline. What will happen? Will I get this video up before then? I don't know. See how it loads. National parks, passport and visas, things like that. Permits and applications. Federal workers will take the brunt of it, I think, Okay. Things that they're really trying to negotiate about are the Affordable Care Act tax credits, Medicaid cuts, cuts to public media, Medicaid-related provisions, rolling back telehealth appointments. One thing about these tax credits, did I already say this? I can't remember. But somebody in the comments, no, I did already say that. Never mind. I keep thinking about that. I had to record this video twice because I messed up. I messed up the speakers. Sometimes I forget if I've already said something or not. So the government shutdown, they need 60 votes to keep it from shutting down. Currently in the Senate, there are 53 Republicans and 47 Democrats. Whoops. But the Republicans have control over the House, the Senate, and obviously the presidency right now. So, but they can't pass this without getting some Democrats on their side, which, nobody wants to shut down the government. And I'm sure they are concerned because there is talk that if they send these federal workers home, they might just fire them. So I'm sure that's on the back of their minds right now. But essential things like the military, border security, veterans pay, Social Security, disability, Medicaid, Medicare, those things won't be affected by the shutdown. The post office doesn't get closed. They're kind of funded differently. And really, like the economy in the past, like the stock markets, they might get like a little shaky, but unless it goes on really long term, it doesn't usually affect the stock market very much. They don't really worry about it. They're like, whatever. But if it goes on long term, then you could start to have more of a ripple effect because it could start to affect, inflation numbers and things like that, I think. Or they won't get any numbers and they get a little nervous. I don't know. I don't know a lot about that. I just tried to look it up, but I didn't really totally get it all. Yeah. All right, guys. Well, I better try to load this up or I'll never get it up in time. I will talk to you soon. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you like this kind of thing, because I know If you do, just let me know because it keeps me going. One, two, three, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Oh shoot, I didn't realize my shirt's